When I went through my collapse, it wasn't my board members. It wasn't my best friends. It wasn't people from my church that were coming over and extending mercy and loving me. They were the ones that were gossiping about me. They were the ones that were telling stories about things that they didn't even know. They were the ones that didn't pick up the phone when I reached out to them. But guess who did come running to me was the kids that I had mentored, the young men that I had invested my life into, the young men that when they got arrested, I didn't walk away from them. I didn't leave and abandon them.
In the kind of Christian circles where I spent my high school and college years, a dramatic testimony, a graphic come to Jesus story, got you stage time. You lived out the message. God could take you from the guttermost to the uttermost, we used to say. Jason Williams, a successful community organizer, has a testimony like that. As a teenager, he was earning $10,000 a month on the streets selling drugs. Meanwhile, he got a full ride at George Mason University to play basketball. Then his two worlds collided. He was arrested 6 times and spent 2 months in jail. GMU canceled his scholarship. He moved to Birmingham, Alabama, and played college ball there. He gave his life to Jesus, and he earned his Master's of Divinity from Birmingham Theological Seminary. He became a community organizer and an entrepreneur, and he started mentoring broken young men like himself. But now in his 40s, Jason is coming out of an even more powerful conversion, the type that a lot of churches refuse to celebrate or even to recognize. It started just 4 years ago when he lost his reputation and his marriage. So what happens when your difficult background, the one that leads you into mentoring and into community organizing in the first place, returns and threatens to destroy your work? And when your life falls apart, what happens to the young men you've worked so hard to mentor? First, let's look at Jason's work in public spaces. I'm Bryce Tolpin.
You know, I had a mentoring organization that I ran for 10 years, raised $3 million. We impacted 850 students. You know, 5 of those are young men that started with me at 8 or 9 years old that are now in their 20s, and that are doing amazing things.
One of those men is 20-year-old Willie Walters, whom I spoke with recently.
We start with showing like, hey, this is who I am. I'm not perfect at all, but this is where we want to be.
Willie mentors 7 young men himself through Renew Birmingham's outreach into local high schools.
I'm not there yet, you're not there yet, but I'm a little farther than you, so I'm going to reach back and extend my hand to help you get to where, but it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be something that happens in one day, and that's what comes with consistency. If I were to see Jason one time a week, if I were to see Jason just one time period, the time that I met him, it wasn't, I don't know what my life would be like, but somebody that showed me like, hey, I'm consistently going to be here and I'm going to show up for you every time that I can show up for you. That's where things started to change.
Jason met Willie around the time Jason started his career in community organizing.
We've got everything from recruiting and then raising money and support and advocating for a church plant in an under-resourced part of West Birmingham, to helping see the development of an early childhood and learning center, to the foundation of a mentoring program, the Aspire movement, which I oversaw for 11 years. Obviously, I'm involved in Renew Birmingham now as youth director, which means I focus in on the community of Inslee. I've got 5 schools. And within those 5 schools, we're developing programming, we're creating resources.
Despite doing amazing community work throughout his career, Jason knew his motives weren't always great.
In 2010, I had been in seminary for 2 years. I was working on a Master's of Divinity. I was really gung-ho about inner city ministry and wanted to engage in cross-cultural ministry, things like that. It was a really popular season for racial reconciliation and, you know, justice and things like that. I used to go to CCDA every summer. And so I had an opportunity to become stated supply at a church in Birmingham that was a cross-cultural church. It was multi-ethnic. And so I step in, I'm preaching every Sunday, I'm meeting with the leadership, and within 6 months, I mean, you talk about like there's nothing happening. I mean, people won't show up, people don't show up to meetings, don't show up to church, people don't show up to service opportunities. And I met with the mentor, I'll never forget, had lunch with him. And I just sat there and for 45 minutes, here's this young, I mean, I'm in my 30s, right? But this is my first like pastoral type job and I'm in seminary now and I'm learning all this stuff and I'm just yapping about all these things that are going on. And he says, Jason, are you done? I just got one question. The people in the church, do you love them? Do you love the people? And man, I cried because I'm like I don't. And I had seen unknowingly people as simply a resource for me to get the work, the purpose that God had given me to get the work done.
Throughout his time serving as an organizer and a father figure, Jason knew that deep down he hadn't changed as much as his testimony implied. And it started with his relationship with his own father, the wound that had gotten him involved in community organizing and mentoring in the first place.
Nobody armed me with the information, Jason. The fact that you didn't have a dad means you're always going to have this wound where you seek affirmation and validation. Anytime that life gets hard and squeezes you in, you're always going to respond from I'm unworthy because I didn't have the love of my father. I wasn't sure that things were going to work out. Walking in the spirit was not some prayer and like, okay, God, woo, we magically start walking in the spirit. Walking in the spirit meant coming to terms that I had a lot of sexual trauma and things in my past that needed to be addressed and brought to God, that He needed to help heal in me, and issues of abandonment that needed to be healed in me that, quite frankly, we weren't supposed to talk about.
Both church and seminary, in effect, discouraged Jason from having the crisis he needed.
It's going to be you examining all of that which you spiritually bypassed over when you became a believer. I was taught in seminary, don't look at psychology, don't listen to philosophy. So much so that everything becomes spiritual. Mm-hmm. And forget the fact that the brain does have the ability to remember, to subconsciously operate through a system of trauma, right? So it's like I actually had to learn that my brain was wired in a way to make me escape all the time. Nobody told me that in church.
Then one day in 2022, Jason had what he calls the crash.
I think it was the public nature of how it happened. I mean, my reputation just, it was crushed. So I think when you walk through the pit of, wait a minute, deep down, you were an approval seeking human. And now every single human being whose approval you admired has completely abandoned you, including your own mom, who me and my mom have a great relationship today. Praise God for that. But there was a season where we weren't talking, and she was always the one who was by my side. Never leave you, never forsake you. That's mom. Well, guess what? I had none of that. And so in that moment, who is it? It's just me and God. It's just, and by the way, I didn't want him either.
Jason is a doer, and he describes himself as someone who always wanted to move on to the next thing. But on this occasion, he couldn't move. He had to sit.
What's the next? I'm like, what's the next step? What's the next step? And I literally, when I tell you this, man, I felt the Lord Himself saying, you never sit long enough. You always move to solve the problem. You always move to the next thing. And this situation that you're in it's not going to be by you taking the next step.
I spent a day with Jason recently as he helped to assess proposed inner city school curriculum, as he taught in inner city school, and as he met with inner city administrators, teachers, and students. We talked about his mentoring while he drove me around. The thing that struck me most is when he called Willie his best friend. But when his life collapsed and his reputation was in tatters, Jason got the most help from the young men whom he had been helping for years.
And so what amazed me in that process was not simply that they were there and present, it was that they called me to accountability. They called me back to remember God. They called me back to remember my purpose. Because I remember telling them, I'm getting out of ministry, guys. I'm not doing this. There's no way I can ever get paid for representing Jesus again because I failed in my marriage. I failed as a leader. I've displayed that my character is not holy. I don't belong in the kingdom. Whatever it is that you want to say and identify yourself, like that's the point I was at in life. And it was these young men who are literally saying, pick your head up. Like you're a child of God. Like look at what God has done through you in my life. Like he's going to overcome this challenge in you. And by the way, I'm learning through this, man. You're teaching me things I didn't realize or recognize. And so that's the beauty. I think anytime, look, if there's anything that's good that comes out of this conversation, we need to stop with one directional views of ministry. We need to stop with that as if somebody's the sage and somebody's the learner, or somebody's the disciple maker and then somebody is the disciplee or mentor. Forget all that, because God has a way of using mutual relationships where there's respect and admiration and there's humility and a desire to learn from one another. When you enter into ministry like that, that's when things happen, man. That's when people really grow and develop, because you really get a chance to be your authentic self. People will love you for who you really are, not loving you for the picture that you're putting forward that's not even really you.
Jason's new book, Hypocrisy, Hedonism, Hope, and Healing, gives a full account of his second and much deeper conversion.
So many people are walking around with fake certainty that they know God, and they don't. In their closet, in their fears, in their doubts, they question everything, and they don't even have a safe place to go. They don't have a safe person to go and ask real important questions about God and themselves. And so that's ultimately why I wrote the book.
The book talks about God, of course, but it doesn't quote scripture. I never for a moment felt preached at. I felt a connection with the main character, Jason, and that connection held up a kind of mirror for me to examine my own life. How are my insecurities and my life's dissonance giving me an invitation to crash and burn and finally have it out with my false self?
I want to be for people what I think modern pastors and churches can't be anymore. There's too much guilt and scarlet letters within the church culture to be able to authentically develop each other without the pretense.
You can order Hypocrisy, Hedonism, Hope, and Healing on lulu.com or use the link on this podcast episode's webpage. The complete and video version of my interview with Jason, which covers many matters not addressed here, is also found on this podcast episode's webpage. Thanks for listening to Public Spaces.